Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks, coming to you today from central Portugal, and it's all over the internet that Portugal is no longer a cheap country. So over the next 8 to 10 minutes, I'm going to see if that's true or not. So let's start. Now, some of the biggest complaints are coming out of Portugal's two biggest cities, Lisbon and Porto. So I think I'll go down to Lisbon and see what the story is down there. So let's go. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here in Lisbon, and it's what everybody should do when they get to Lisbon, is have a nice cup of coffee, café pingado, and one of these nice custard tarts, the pastel de nata, which of course is famous in this city as well. And we'll have a look at the price of this coffee, €1.30, and the tart was €1.50, so I don't reckon that's expensive. What about you? And one thing I will say is that the coffee in Lisbon is fantastic. And what about this? Wow! Now, one of the biggest complaints people have in this city is when it comes to the price of housing, accommodation per se. Very, very expensive at the moment. But is it a problem only here in Lisbon and in Porto? I don't know. Or do other parts of Portugal have the same problem when it comes to expensive housing? Well, the answer to that question is yes, because the place in Portugal where we have a small apartment has also seen quite a substantial increase in prices over the last 10 years or so. In fact, house prices have basically doubled, and so have rents. So the price of housing and accommodation definitely out of control in many parts of Portugal. But what about some other things? Are they expensive as well compared to some other places that I've been to? Let's go and find out. €4 for a haircut, don't know about you, but in my book, that's a bargain. And food prices, as we just saw there at a restaurant, I don't think are expensive either. $7.50 for the plato of the day, which is fairly cheap, and you can get a bowl of soup for €1.50. Again, a bargain. What about in the supermarkets? Let's go and see. So supermarket prices here, we can see soup $2.79 for a litre of soup, I think. Not too bad. Fruit prices, we've got melons on special there, grapes as well. Eggs, $2.51 for a dozen. Toilet paper, €6 for 12. Deodorants, you can get an idea of some of the prices there. Dishwashing liquid, Fairy, $3.69. Fresh milk, €1.09 a litre. Butter, €2.22 a tub. Tomatoes, $2.19. Bananas, $1.24. So again, looking at supermarket prices here in Lisbon, I don't think things are all that expensive, but again, my opinion. And in this place behind me here, you can even get a beer during happy hour for €1. Wow! So from what I've seen so far, prices here in Lisbon, not too bad if you compare them with Madrid, of course. Housing, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions so far, the biggest issue here. But the rest of the things that I've seen, not too bad in my opinion. And of course, €1.30 for a coffee, cheap if you compare that to prices that you would pay for the same thing in Australia. Now, let's head north. Let's head back to where I have my apartment, and we'll check out some of the prices there as well and see if they're in line with what's going on here in Lisbon or cheaper. Let's go. Okay, so back in central Portugal now in a place called Peniche, about 100 kilometres north of Lisbon, and it's morning tea time, so I'm going to go and have a coffee and a snack and see how much it costs here. So let's go. Olá, bom dia. Café pingado, se faz favor, e bola de arroz. Ah, sim, você? Então, cada dele? €2,10. €2,10. So can't complain about the prices here. Coffee and cake, €2.10. So anybody who thinks Portugal's expensive, better think again. But I think for the sake of the general Portuguese population, it's in the government's interest to keep the price of things like coffee down to as low as it can. Because if locals had to pay for a coffee what Australians pay for a coffee, for example, there'd be a revolution. Now, there's no doubt that inflation post-COVID has had an effect here in Portugal too. Prices have risen quite a lot. Daily prices, the day-to-day things have gone up. But as you guys have seen so far with some of the prices that I've shown, both in Lisbon, the capital city here in Portugal, and also here in Peniche, prices are not too bad if you compare them to other countries around the world. But remember, it's all relevant to local salaries, and salaries here in Portugal are low compared to other European countries, especially when you talk about average salaries or minimum salaries, and that's part of the problem. But from people coming from other European countries or from the States to retire here in Portugal, life must still be fairly cheap compared to the lives that they had before, or at least that's what I think. So I don't understand why so many people are complaining on the internet. But it all comes back to one thing, the cause of a lot of people's complaints, and that is affordable housing, not only for the local population but also for people coming to live in Portugal, because as we saw in Lisbon, prices there are very expensive, and even this part of Portugal, which as I said is an hour north of the capital city Lisbon, prices have gone up a lot, as I mentioned before in the video. In fact, to buy a property here now, a 2-bedroom property, a decent 2-bedroom property, will set you back around 210,000 euros. That's right, 210,000 euros. Around 10 years ago, you could have bought that same property for around 120,000, 130,000 euros. So in my books, that's a fairly big increase in 10 years. And why have housing prices here gone through the roof in recent years? Well, supply and demand, I reckon, is the reason for that. But I could be wrong, and if I am, let me know in the comment section below. And let's be honest, when you have views like this every day, why wouldn't you want to live in a place like this? Spectacular. So I'm starting to see that although the cost of living crisis here in Portugal has been an issue, Portugal is still a lot cheaper for day-to-day things than a lot of countries, not only in Europe, but around the world, especially where I come from originally, Australia, way cheaper than there. But I reckon I'm going to have to go to another part of Portugal, the interior part of the country, and see what life is like there before I can come to a conclusion. So let's go. Okay, so I've come to central Portugal, got no idea where I am. If I find out, I'll put it on the screen for you guys. The good news is that in this village, they have fiber optica internet connection. So people are living here with a decent internet connection. And I'm going to go and have a coffee in this place here and see how much it costs. So let's go. So basically, the further you move away from the coast, the cheaper things become, obviously here in Portugal. As I said, we're in the middle of nowhere, and this coffee, 75 cents. I bought two, €1.50. Let's try it. A little bit bitter for my liking, but a decent coffee nonetheless. But for 75 cents, you can't go wrong. So it's obvious that where prices have risen the most on the coast in this country, the big cities, Lisbon and Porto. But as soon as you come inland, around 150 kilometres inland from the coast, the prices are as they have always been. 75 cents for this, a bargain. And one thing you're going to see in this part of Portugal are classic motorcycles like the ones that we have in front of us there. Wow. So I'm here now in the Alentejo region of Portugal, central Portugal. This is cork area, a lot of cork trees in this part of Portugal, and one of the main industries in this part of Portugal is the cork industry. And I'm going to check out some of the real estate prices in this town called Ponte de Sor. This is the river where the town gets its name from, the Sor River, which runs through. So let's check out real estate prices here. And there's 184 properties for sale in this town. Now let's have a look at some of the prices here. So for example, you can get a house, 295,000 euros, 487 square meters. It says it's a small farm, looks like a decent sized property. A terraced house here, also 180,000 euros, 262 square meters, parking included, spacious, well located house. And if we have a look at what the rental market's like, let's have a look. Not a lot on offer, I'm going to be honest, only 7 houses or flats for rent in this town, but prices are starting at around 200 euros a month. I'll check out what else we've got here. And basically you can get a 4-bedroom flat here for 680 euros a month, 135 square meters. A house also for 550 euros a month, 110 square meters. So property prices in this part of Portugal a lot less for obvious reasons. But of course, if you're a digital nomad, you can work from the internet. This could be a place to look for. I mean, why would you want to live in a big city when you could have better quality of life in a place like this, in my opinion? But again, just my opinion. And also, when it comes to eating and drinking in this part of Portugal, prices are a lot lower as well, and you get huge portion sizes. We had lunch earlier today, 13 euros for the main course, and it fed 3 people. We also had soup. They brought out a big bowl of soup, enough there for 3 people also, 4 euros and 50 cents. So eating and drinking in this part of Portugal, also a lot better value than the bigger cities nowadays. So as I said, why wouldn't you consider living in this part of Portugal and not on the coast? So time to bring this video to an end from this fantastic location here, very close to the border with Spain, and answer the question, or try to work out whether Portugal is still a cheap country or not. And the answer to the question is it depends where you are in Portugal. If you're in one of the 2 biggest cities, whether it be Lisbon or Porto, the answer is no. But if you want a cheaper part of Portugal, you've got to go to the interior part of the country, the places that I showed you on the way here. In those places, you can still find bargains. So questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. If you have anything to add to this conversation, please, the comment section is the place for you. Give me your opinion on the cost of living here in Portugal, whether you still find it a bargain or not. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego, até logo from Portugal.